Hello and welcome to the 4Corners podcast. I'm Brad, joined by Matt, and returning this week is Shad. How are you doing this week, gentlemen?
Doing all right. Weather change is tap dancing on my sinuses, but I'm feeling okay.
That's good. So we have a fun, action-packed episode for you guys this week. I know the title of the episode's a little incendiary. I promise it's not. I just did not know how to better title that. It's going to be more of a philosophical discussion based on like some online sentiments I've been seeing. But before we get to that, and we're going to do we're going to do our two topics, but one topic is related to the Cody topic. So that's how it's going to work. But first, we have a bit of a freak fight coming up this week. I think it's Friday, isn't it? Is it on Netflix?
Is it finally happening?
Yeah, it's Friday, I think.
Because it got postponed.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it is Friday, I'm pretty sure. So this is going to be the long wait. It's been like a year in the making.
Something like that.
I know it's supposed to happen. It was supposed to happen like months ago, and then I think
Tyson
for some
got
reason
sick
it got
or
delayed
something.
because of injury or something.
Yeah,
something like that. So it was delayed quite a bit, but yeah.
So this is the Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson fight, and so we're gonna kind of do our like kind of a round table pick 'em for this. I don't know if I'll actually watch it because it might be depressing, but so Mike Tyson is 58 years old. He had that Roy Jones Jr. Exhibition, was that 2021 or 2020?
I'd have to look it up. I don't recall.
I don't know.
And he hasn't had like a fight since 2005, I think, is the last time he boxed. Jake Paul, I think, is 11-1 and lost one decision. So that's kind of the background of it. So do either of you want to go first and take the who you taking for this?
I am going to say that, barring some kind of freak incident, and I'm not confident enough in this to put money down, but barring a freak incident, I'm going to say that this goes to a split decision draw. Because, number one...
Interesting.
Here's why, all right? They had to entice Mike Tyson enough to do this, right? They had to pay him enough. And it's not like, Mike Tyson is many things, and maybe he doesn't have the ego he used to, but you're going to try and lure him out of retirement to say, oh, we want you to come lose. Two, there is no way that we're having this bout and Jake Paul is going in with any possibility of losing. It doesn't matter who it's to. So my thought is, in order to save face, they're going to go, 60-minute Broadway and split. There was talk about a leaked clause from the contract that Tyson was not allowed to knock Paul out if he had the opportunity. And I'm just like, this is not an actual fight. This is rigged. This isn't for anything. This is an exhibition bout, like all of Paul's have been. So there's no way I'm believing that he's... If that's... This is not up and up, is what I'm saying.
If that's true, then Tyson has no chance, because that's his, like... That is his, like, ace in the hole, because if it comes down to just, like, fundamentally boxing, he's not going to have the hand speed or, like, the endurance to outbox Paul. Because Paul does have talent. That's what I think people fail to realize when they go into these and they like are going in rage baiting, wanting to see him lose. It's like, well, no, like he's actually like a skilled boxer, and they carefully handpick opponents that really don't have like a background.
Yeah, that something about both Paul brothers, both Jake Paul and Logan Paul. And Logan Paul is controversial because he obviously is a wrestler in WWE, and I feel has shown like a lot of competency, and that's controversial because people have said because he does only a few matches a year, and yet they're highly choreographed, and so
his
basically just
his controversy comes from a
he
YouTube
has other
video he
controversy.
did. Well,
Yeah, more than that.
he seems
There's a lot more actually.
well.
He is a controversial individual.
He seems to
Yeah.
have become a better person since the main one people hate him for, which is a fair one that they do hate him for. But he went to that forest in Japan that's like noted because
The
people
suicide
go.
forest.
Yeah, I don't remember like the exact name for it, and kind of
It
made
has
light of it.
It has a specific name. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's kind of why people dislike him. And I think that's a good reason. And there was something he did recently. Like,
There's a few things. Number one,
Yeah.
he started his own crypto scam. And
I mean,
no matter how way you slice it, like not even like crypto bro stuff, like straight up set up to be a scam and tied in through some kind of game or something. Number two, now he's in a lawsuit over his Prime beverage and being sued by the producer and or the distributor, something like that. Like, I have pretty much nothing good to say about him that is not objective view numbers on YouTube.
yeah.
Or something like that.
I think he also had a controversy recently where he did a YouTube video where he was like on like a motorboat or something like that, and
the dog
for the YouTube,
dog thing, yeah.
He kicked his dog off the boat, and some people like, I don't know what happened to the dog. I assume the dog is okay, but people were like, that's incredibly dangerous, like because it was moving high speed. Some people were like, oh, it could go into the propeller, which I mean, I don't know, but that was another point of controversy. He's also, he's a controversial figure, but I guess my point with both the Paul brothers is that whatever you want to say about them, like they actually do have athletic ability, like legit.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're both athletic, and for a long time I would hear that sometimes in relation to pro wrestling or combat sports, even fake combat sports, and I kind of was like, what does that really mean? Like, and obviously in a place like pro wrestling, you can get by and even become quite successful as more of just a character versus going out there and doing crazy athletic stuff. But I guess like someone like CM Punk specifically has maybe turned the corner. It's like, oh, I get what you mean by that, because CM Punk has gotten bad injured and he just shit the bed in UFC and is otherwise like not able to do some things that other guys who even like did not have a tenth of his success can. It's because that's why he's actually not very athletic. He can get a certain size and body build. He's a good wrestler.
Let's not whitewash how bad CM Punk did by saying he shit the bed. He was an abject, did not belong in an octagon, made a joke of the sport, failure. To the point he got tickled in his last fight because he was so helpless.
I mean, the dude damn near... I'll give Logan Paul credit. He does a far superior buckshot lariat than CM Punk ever did.
And it's not a defense of Logan Paul, but a crypto scam is like a Tuesday for most YouTubers now. Because I know Boogie just pulled one over the summer.
Yeah, that's not great.
Yeah. And I mean, Jake was the NFT one. Jake was big in the early NFT.
Oh, the NFTs.
Yeah,
which was
he was an originator. I mean, that. Every celebrity's done an NFT scam at this point, though.
Yeah, that's almost like, to me, it's the old expression, like a fool and his money, or pardon. It's like, what do you mean, like, spend all this money on a picture and like, oh, you own the right to the picture? It's like, is it an actual painting? Like, oh no, it's just a digital picture. It's like, no, like if you want to sell me a painting, an actual physical painting that I can hang on my wall, and you want to say like that's valued at like $100,000, like, okay, like that's literally how things have been done for centuries.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, because like that's it.
Because the other thing is, like,
you're an idiot if you bought into all that crap. But
there's nothing preventing someone from changing the picture, and you would have nothing you could do about it. But it was always stupid. So I explained to someone once, and they gave me this look, and I'm like, look, it sounds really stupid, but it's even dumber than you think it is.
Yeah. Take the stupidest thing you've heard of, and actually it's really dumber in actuality.
Like, if someone...
Technically, it's even dumber.
NFTs are so dumb that if someone is trying to talking positively of them or wants to like get into them, like selling them, like I instantly lose like 5 levels of respect for them. Like they lose
Do
massive credibility with me.
people even try that anymore? I don't even think it's a thing anymore.
You
But I
get
could be wrong.
you have a
but
couple of companies that are like way behind the curve, like talk about it a little bit, but like it's
hmm,
the big thing now is they've kind of all failed, but there's these like crypto games is kind of like the big scam right now, and like crypto
hmm.
bros get all into it, and then the games are always like garbage. I think like one has been like sort of okay-ish, but that's
That
the
the
big thing right now.
that was what happened with the Pauls, was that theirs was a crypto game, and then they violated their own contract with it, if I remember right. Um, yeah, it's just like whenever you go through the whole thing, it's just like, wow, they had no intention of ever playing this straight. So,
Hmm.
uh,
My favorite
yeah.
crypto scam was like that island they were gonna try and set up their own like crypto like country in.
I didn't hear
Oh,
about that.
now I can't remember the name of it. It was that micronation that was set up on like an old mining or drilling platform or something.
Yep.
Is that right?
Yeah.
This is, that sounds like the dumbest thing.
Well,
They're setting up our
that
own country.
existed already. Like
Yeah.
the micronation already existed, but they're like, no, man, if we do all this, then we'll do these things. And I'm like, will you really?
Yeah. And the other problem with NFTs and, you know, cryptocurrency is they're all just pretenders to Doge. That is the true cryptocurrency.
Uh, Dogecoin.
Yes.
Um,
Dogecoin's the best.
Long digression aside, I do think that the Paul brothers have like athletic ability, and Jake Paul, whether he's carefully curated all his fights to begin with, I think he does have some boxing ability, or at least athletic ability. It's translated a bit into boxing, and he's 30 years younger than Mike Tyson. And the problem with Mike Tyson is that even back in its day, I think we've talked about this like off camera. It's like Mike Tyson. There's a reason why all of Mike Tyson's like fights were short back in the day. It wasn't just because like he's just that great of a fighter, and he was a great fighter, but he would go out there quick because he didn't necessarily have the stamina to be like, let's go like, X number of rounds. So
He
he'd get
wasn't
things done quickly because,
he wasn't a great fundamental boxer either.
well,
After
he's
I'm
Go ahead.
sorry, man, go ahead.
no, yeah, no, you're fine. Go ahead.
After Tyson left his initial trainer, he quit throwing combinations like he had done that had made him real popular and started headhunting. Now the thing about Mike Tyson is he's not a tall dude.
No.
I'm not sure how tall he is, but he has hands like Greg Valentine. They're like his hands are the size of catcher mitts.
Catcher's mitts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has massive hands, and I mean, he could hit like a beast. The scary thing was, you watch early Tyson, he would have 3-hit combos that would just fly, and then later on, he's just looking for that one big hit to knock you flat. And the thing is, he's a good enough puncher to do it. So, and what was the Rocky line? The last thing to go was a man's punch,
Yeah.
which is why I think that that clause is in there.
Yeah, but like yeah, the more Don King got involved, the more his fundamentals kind of declined. Like if you watch like the Buster Douglas fight, which you can find on YouTube, like they're trying to like use like a balloon with like water in it for his eye and stuff. That's how like incompetent his team got over time.
Mm.
So I'm gonna take Jake Paul by split decision, because I think now I'm gonna pretend it's on the up and up, and that Tyson's actually gonna be looking to win. I think Jake Paul has enough skill to avoid like what Tyson would be capable of for catching him for a knockout, and just like kind of bog things down and score enough to pull out a boring decision, is what I'm gonna say.
So you really think that Shad kind of thinks it like the fix is in?
Yeah.
Like he thinks it's.
I'm pretending it's on the up and up is what I'm gonna do.
I find Shad's proposal like fascinating. I guess I haven't like thought too hard about this one way or the other, but it makes. I actually looked it up, Brad. That the Jones like exhibition, it went to 8 rounds and it was a draw. So yeah, maybe they will pull the same thing where it goes the distance and it's a draw again. I will say, like, all things considered, like in theory, like Mike Tyson, even 30 years old, if he still has like some of the old Iron Mike in him, like he could, in theory, like knock Jake Paul out if it's on the up and up. Like it's potentially like
Oh,
there,
flash
even
KO
though
is
Jake
always
Paul's
possible.
yeah, he's 30 years younger, and I would guess is probably like at this point more agile and maybe faster than Mike Tyson. But Mike Tyson did at one point was like, world class, like and fantastic, like amazing, like hitter, everything. Like he so I guess it's still a possibility. I will say, like, I saw something recently. I'm not really gonna watch it, but it does make me want to maybe like watch it. Just they were selling it, and Mike Tyson was selling it, and I don't know. I think he has reached the point where he's a little self-aware.
Oh, he's totally self-aware. But like the thing you gotta understand about Mike Tyson, he
himself, because I don't know if you recall. Yeah.
I was gonna say the thing you gotta understand with Tyson is he's not a great human being,
Mm-hmm.
but the thing is, he got medicated. Like that is a big difference in him, and I think he's even talked about that. Is he got medicated?
Yeah, he if you recall, like it was 3 seasons. He did Iron Mike Mysteries for Adult Swim, which is actually a pretty funny show. Not the least of which because they had Norm Macdonald play one of the characters. Who was probably the best character on the show. But yeah, he was Pigeon. He was a like an adulterous man who somehow got turned into a pigeon. But he's still like lecherous. But and he was Mike was clearly like kind of in the joke of himself as like a kind of a ridiculous character there. So I think he might be a little bit self-aware. And so because he's self-aware, maybe the things that he says to promote the fight can also be taken in that same vein. It's like he knows what he's doing. But he gave a promo recently. I say promo, it's very wrestling mindset, but he kind of like was hyped, like promoting the fight, and he gave like this little comment. And when he said that, and it's like, again, he's 58 years old. In a different context, I'd be far more disturbed as Jake Paul. But he was basically said like, yeah, like I've been training, and I've really tried hard to put that whole like the Iron Mike like mentality, like that character, that persona behind. But all this training, like he's kept coming back, and I don't like that guy. I really wish I didn't keep going back to that guy, and like that guy wasn't like who I am now. And it's like he's basically like working at that. It's like Iron Mike is an alternate personality, a split personality, and dark evil side that is now taking back over Mike Tyson, the good-hearted man, the good-hearted man he's now struggled to become. And now Iron Mike's coming back, like he's fallen back into that darkness. And again, I think he's just hyping it up. He's self-aware that you got to promote the fight, right? And so he's hyping this up. But like, to me, it was effective. I'm like, oh man, maybe I want to watch this fight. Maybe I'll see Iron Mike come out and just brutalize this Jake Paul.
And I will say, I'm gonna give. There's one thing I'm gonna say in Tyson's favor, just from recent things we've seen. We watched Francis Ngannou knock Tyson Fury right on his ass in a fight because Fury didn't take him seriously enough, and Ngannou, took him down. Which I still think he won that fight, but that's neither here nor there. We won't open that can of worms. So, so Shed has split decision draw. I have split decision win. What do you have, Matt?
You know what? Maybe I'll go with Shad. I'll go split decision draw.
Okay.
I think Shad logic has won me over here. And I didn't even think about this. I forgot that the fight was happening. And
the Cardi is in.
So quickly. Yeah, I mean, it makes logical sense. It's like, it's gimmicked. It's all gimmicked.
Yeah, it's gimmicks. It's turtles and gimmicks the whole way down, man. You know, if we, I'm tempted to just go somewhere and lay $10 down on like split decision draw. Be like, there you go, because I can't imagine what the return on that would be.
They might.
Just
I think Jake's like a. Oh, he's like a minus 275. I think is what I saw.
Hmm.
So
you're gonna have to phrase it differently because I don't keep up with that.
That's so. If you're when you're so he's. I don't know
Is
the
he got
exact
the handicap because he's favorite?
That's he's the 275 favorite, and Tyson's like plus like 170 something, I think.
Okay.
So those are the odds. That would affect your payout if you put money down on it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't remember what it was. They used to explain it when I watched like more MMA stuff.
Yeah.
But so the main topic of the night. So this is gonna lead into a bigger topic, but so so the idea here is, it's like I said, I don't mean it to be as incendiary as the title is. So the title of the episode is Cody Rhodes a failure as world champion, and I don't mean it quite that incendiary. But like I've been seeing kind of a growing sentiment online since around, I'd say, August. And it's not people like us like that were bitching about the Roman title reign. It's a lot of like what I would call fed-pilled people saying kind of like, man, I'm really bored with like Cody as champion, or I wish Cody would turn heel, or they would go with someone else. And I was kind of surprised by that. And I would say the sentiment's been growing, but then I started kind of digging into his title defenses and thinking about things, and I was kind of like, well, like he really hasn't had good challengers. And you know, having like one of the big pay-per-views, your title defense is against Solo Sikoa. I can see why people aren't like digging the reign, because I looked at like who he's defending against. It's like Shinsuke Nakamura, Solo Sikoa, AJ Styles. Like that's the kind of people he's defending. I think Dominic Rhodes was like one of
Dominic
the PLEs.
Rhodes.
I mean Dominic Mysterio. Sorry, brain rot. But like
It's all right, it's all
that
right.
was like one of them, I think.
So
And he just beat Gunther, which I think has probably been his best like title like program so
Yeah.
far.
that was for the Saudi Arabia belt. We have to have an excuse for having.
Yes.
So if I'm going to consider there, anytime you've just crowned a new face champion, you are going to have, at least in the E, you are going to have what you might call, I don't want to use the term, I don't want to use a term that's like soft or sounds like I'm talking down to him. You're going to have, your first opponents are going to be ones that are trying to cement you, that are like trying to make you as the champ. Not they're not people who are going to win. Right?
They're guys
You're
that have
getting wins.
some credibility to them, maybe like someone that was a champion like 5 years ago that's on the downside of their career. Someone that has like a long like standing meaning in the promotion.
Yeah.
Someone like that.
It would be like, and then obviously it's not going to happen right now, but it would be like, let's say that, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but let's say that Orange Cassidy wins the heavyweight title at Full Gear. Having someone like Copeland or Christian Cage or something
Eddie
like that
Kingston.
be his first challenger, and then so you get a win that starts building your credibility as champion. I was going to call them puffball challengers because you knew they weren't ever going to win, but that's not really fair because that's not what their job is. Their job is to make this new champ look good. So I think that it might be more fair to say that we kind of need to take the first 2 or 3 of those and just call it a mulligan, because they're not, I mean, the point behind that is not that they're going to be the most legit challengers in the world. They're
Mm.
kind of exhibition bouts.
Yeah, you want to build up the new champ credibility.
Mhm.
So you have him beat a couple guys that when you book it, like you're not really expecting that these guys have a chance. But
Yeah.
it's still like you conceptually you understand what's happening, and it's like it is to build up credibility. Like you're not expecting like kind of recent in AEW. It's like some people were complaining like right after Danielson won the title, it's like, oh, why is he defending Jack Perry? Like it's like they're not putting the title on Jack Perry, guys. Like, come on, it's
Yeah.
you know it's just more to build up Jack Perry. Is like, look, he can challenge for the title. He's not gonna win it, but he can challenge for it. Whereas other people like when you transition from Samoa Joe to Swerve, people were kind of expecting like, oh, Swerve's gonna do it, and you felt it was gonna happen. It did,
Yeah.
but there were other guys that probably could have put in there, like against Samoa Joe, that it's like you would have had a chance, like, oh, maybe this will happen if you put like Samoa Joe versus like Hangman,
Mhm.
or even Samoa Joe, maybe like Samoa Joe versus like Darby. It's like, well, it could be they could win, but if you're gonna have like a Dynamite right now, like Jon Moxley, if it's like Jon Moxley versus I don't know, like trying to think, not Roderick Strong, who's like a mid card like AEW face that I could put in there? Not like your lot.
Garcia.
Kyle O'Reilly.
Kyle O'Reilly would be a good one because Kyle O'Reilly is like connected with Orange Cassidy, who's going to main event. And Orange Cassidy himself is kind of like, no one's really expecting Orange Cassidy to win the title at Full Gear.
Yeah, but Orange Cassidy's
but-
I would argue Orange Cassidy is an upper mid carder with shades of main eventer in him now. Like, so he's not a mid carder anymore.
Orange Cassidy, it's not the right time, but there is an argument to be made that at some point within the next like couple of years, probably, that you could and arguably maybe should give Orange Cassidy a world title run, even if it's like a brief one. Like he holds it for like a couple weeks, a month, as a transition between champions. But like you could do that just because he has become in the 5 years that AEW has been around, like he has become one of the, like you said, like the upper mid card, like main event, it's quasi main event guys. And he's a guy that you, as they've done now, you can slot into the main event as a main event challenger for the title, even if you don't necessarily anticipate that he's gonna like win it. Like he can challenge for the belt, and it's not like, why are they doing this? This is so stupid. It's like, no, it makes logical sense because he's at that level.
Yeah.
But with Cody's reign, I get that, but it's also, I think the problem is, I think I kind of am. I don't know if I would full out say it's a failure, but it's kind of a failure because it's just meandering. There doesn't really seem to have been a purpose to it.
Yeah, I think the problem is he wasn't supposed to win it at Mania. He was supposed to win it last year, and they changed it at the last minute, and then they changed it this year because of Backlash. Because I think so. This is just what I think would have made his reign work. Is the feud with Brock Lesnar last year? If he had won the title and that had been his first program, and then they did like the switch where Brock injures him, wins the title, and he wins it back, that would have been like, that probably would have been a program that would be talked about 10 years in the future. Like it would have been like a classic program, probably one of the best things they've run in forever. But with this one, he disappears for several weeks, and then his first challenger is like AJ Styles, who, like, I love AJ Styles, but AJ's at that point in his career where, like, I don't think anyone really cares about him. Like,
he was gone for a long time, and then he's not who he was, and so
he doesn't even look like him.
Everybody's just kind of like, yeah, we love AJ, but this is not the AJ that we used to know. And I've been an AJ Styles fan for 22 years. Like, I loved AJ. Was one of my top 5. I love the guy, but he's slowing down.
Yeah, you can love someone forever and just
AJ.
be like, you can just be like, I don't want to watch them wrestle anymore. Like Like Macho Man. Macho Man's like one of my favorites. They're like Ric Flair. I love Ric Flair. I don't want to watch Ric Flair wrestle. I haven't wanted to watch Ric Flair wrestle for 20 years now.
What were you gonna
Well,
say, Matt?
certainly, yes, certainly now, like you don't want to watch Ric Flair. AJ, I still love AJ, and I'd probably rank AJ higher than a guy that people also like are basically like, please go away. It's Chris Jericho. And I don't hate Chris Jericho the way some people online do. I think Chris Jericho suffers from the fact that he's been around for 5 years with AEW and consistently had like a top spot on TV or in the card, and he's kind of stale at this point, so he'd benefit from just being gone even with like 6 months. But he's also like edgy in his mid-50s, so it's like I can't just go away for like 6 months because I don't really have that much time left in the tank anyway.
Yeah.
But AJ, I don't know if he's quite like that where it's like you can go away. I love you, but I won't miss you if you go away. But I also think like he is not at that level anymore. Where I think because of his history and the level that he used to be at, and the fact he was world champion, even the WWE, like you could have him be a challenger and have like a mini feud with Cody, and I think that was fine. I don't have any problems with that. Just that I just feel like there has. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say one line. I think this was a perfect use. Perfect thing to do with him. Great.
I have no regrets about that. And I don't mind, like you said, like a couple like one-offs where it's like now this random throwaway pay-per-view, Cody's gonna defend against like Dominic. It's like, well,
yeah,
Dominic,
but that should be like a
it's kind
Raw.
of over as a heel.
That should be like a Raw title match though.
Yeah, but I mean, we started watching this in the 90s. Like, there's plenty of times I would necessarily say you would feel sometimes you would feel like a monthly. They had the monthly pay per view, so you would get your champion on one of the off-brand pay-per-views. Like you would have not a Starrcade, not a Mania, not SummerSlam or Survivor Series. Not Halloween Havoc or something like a bigger pay-per-views. Like your Backlash or Spring Stampede or something. You'd have it could be like I don't know, like Hogan against Rick Steiner, something like.
Yeah.
Or you could have like Shawn Michaels against like Farouk when Farouk was like Nation Domination, but he wasn't really like the level you knew they're going to put the title on it. Like you could have that, and I think that's fine. So I guess I'm used to that. So if they did that, like I'm okay with it. The problem I feel with that is like it's just been that there hasn't really been like to me a dedicated feud, and he's just still in the bloodline orbit.
Yeah.
And I don't see that changing, like because I think that I can already see what it seems like the plan is that they're probably going to have Cody in some combination of a match against Roman, so Cody Roman 3, or Cody versus Rock.
Well, I was
or
thinking.
Roman versus Rock. Maybe
I was
just take the title off
thinking.
Cody before then.
I was kind of thinking they're gonna work something with him and Orton probably for Rumble, because he's been teaming with Orton, and then they're gonna do Cody and Rock at Mania because it was obvious from the build up to last Mania is Rock and Cody are the only thing that people cared about. Like Seth and Roman were just kind of ancillary characters to that. So that's kind of my thinking. I think there will be another Cody and Roman, but I think Orton's going to figure in there somewhere.
So I think Matt, you hit on. I'm sorry. I think you hit on the thing.
Go ahead.
The thing that's been okay. So apparently, internally, if it's to be believed, the company is very happy with Cody in his spot. Okay, fine. But they have done no favors by, number one, keeping him in the bloodline orbit, and then number two, prioritizing bloodline such stuff so much that that's the main story. And look, I've said it before in another setting. Look, that company is it's not for me. It's just not for me anymore. It's what they have done is kind of they're kind of the Apple of the wrestling world now. We have created our little ecosystem that's inside the walls, and this is how we do it. And get in line because this is how we're going to do it. And it just doesn't appeal to me anymore. But even hearing that they're still doing bloodline stuff, I'm kind of like, God, really?
Yeah.
Well, it has problems because so they're trying to make Solo Sikoa a thing. But the problem is they signed Jacob Fatu, and Jacob Fatu's just way better than Solo. Like in all aspects.
In ring, he certainly is way better than Solo Sakai.
Even his presence though. Even like his presence.
His presence is better. I can't say I've heard him promo or anything. Not that Solo Sakai is great at that, but his presence is better. I think, unfortunately, certainly with stuff that came out recently where he scammed a charity.
Oh yeah.
Event. He seems like in real life he's probably not a much worse human being than some of the other bloodline people, and that's, I mean, some of the Usos are routine habitual DUI people, so it's okay, but there's two problems I think really with Cody's reign. One, Chad, you're incredibly right. The bloodline stuff, having him still associated with bloodline, and or having bloodline be such the focus, and I get it. The bloodline is your moneymaker, so you want to keep pushing it, but having it have such prominence, it has completely overshadowed Cody, I think, at points. I mean, Roman Reigns was gone after Mania for months, 4 to 6 months, I want to say. I don't know exactly.
I think he showed back up
months,
at SummerSlam.
And he comes back. Yeah, so okay, that's 4 months.
4 months, yeah.
And he comes back, and it's everything is oh, what's Roman gonna do? Everything Roman. And it's Roman's not the world champion. And everyone's well, who cares? It basically is well, who cares if he's world champion? He's more interested in the title of tribal chief. And it's so you have a world champion, and you've now made him completely secondary to the guy who's not the world champion. Yes, he was your world champion, but he's not. You're having him you're presenting on your TV that the bigger deal is him being the tribal chief again versus him actually being champion, to the point where they literally had. I saw this clip. It was the whatever you call the necklace that signifies, that you're tribal chief. That was in the corner of the ring. It was the world title and the lei. And Roman comes out there and he looks at the the championship, and he brushes it aside and grabs the lei. And it's that. And there are people online, Fed fans, the Fed pilled people, who are just oh my God, oh look, he cares more about being tribal chief. And it's yeah, but what you have done right there is show this matters more than the championship. But that's the second part. The second part is the reason why I feel it is kind of a failure, is because you literally had Roman as champ, beating everyone, sometimes multiple times. He beat someone like Kevin Owens multiple times. You had him beat everyone and have the title for 3 years or so.
It was 2.5.
You finally had. It felt 100, but you finally had him. You finally had him lose the title to Cody, and that should mean something. And I guess it was, because it did elevate Cody as, he's in theory your new ace. And you've then had, because it was such a monumental thing, then I think the follow-up you should be you should have a better plan for Cody. And I don't feel they've done that. I say that with the caveats again. I get you want to have a couple of interim challengers to kind of build up credibility, but it's okay, yeah, maybe you do that for the first 2, 3, 4 months, but then after that, you should have him be now he's gonna get into a 3 or 4 month feud with Gunther, and have them have just awesome matches, and he comes out on top. Or maybe you have Cody versus, I don't like him, but CM Punk, and it's yeah, have him go over CM. You have big names. You have him go. It's just he's still in the bloodline orbit, and I already see the end result of this. I feel is likely going to be him losing the title either to Roman or Rock. Because what the real money match for them is Roman versus Rock.
Well, see, I think the problem though is I think the problem though is they also have is, which I don't know why they did this. So they had Roman have that really long reign, But the problem is
Mhm.
Gunther had a really long Intercontinental title reign right along with it.
Mhm.
And they were both heels, so they entirely stagnated their card all the
Mhm.
way down. So the problem he's also having is there's no heels. Their bench of heels, they don't have ready. It's
Mhm.
like so you're doing Solo Sikoa because you're trying to build him up, but he's really not taking. And Tama Tonga, I would actually I don't think Tama Tonga is a great worker, but I think you would get more out of doing would have gotten more out of doing a match with him and Tama than you would have like with Solo. Just because Tama
I feel Tama Tonga is a better worker. I feel Tama has.
he's a good promo. He's got way better screen presence and stuff. But but then
Mm.
you're having him do matches like Shinsuke Nakamura. Like no one takes Shinsuke Nakamura seriously as a threat. Um, and I think that's kind of like so. I think because I think when people talk about world champions, there's a lot you have to take into account with a world champion, and it's not all like the champion's fault. Like sometimes it's the champion's fault, but like challengers are important too.
If you're just ripping through a bunch of paper tigers, then everybody's going to be aware of it. Nobody's going to be impressed. No one's going to think of you as much of a champion. And so, are we transitioning into the philosophical discussion now?
Yeah, we can talk about the philosophical
Okay.
discussion.
Well, can I add one final thing
Mm-hmm.
about Cody? And this is kind of venting about my venting about like my recent frustrations with like Dave Meltzer. But Dave Meltzer has said like on Twitter and everything like that basically Cody should be considered higher in like the kind of pantheon of WWE champions than John Cena
Oh no
because
no.
Cody because his argument again because Dave is laser focused and he shouldn't be like he's laser focused just on business and because Cody is a champion at a time when the WWE is historic revenues and historic earnings and his merch is doing quite well he's at least higher than Cena because Cena may have been the ace for many years, champion for many years, but it's not like the same level of business that they did
No.
during those years.
No, but the problem with
Which,
that is
again,
it's they're well so they're getting that as a brand. Like the brand is getting that money. Like it's kind of ancillary who's
agree.
champion right now. But the problem with what he's saying though is part of the reason that brand is there is because of what other people have done, namely John Cena. And
Yeah.
even today, the one person they can put on a card that's going to bring people in, which Cody and Roman can't even do this. If a card's lagging, you know who they pull in? They don't pull in Cody and Roman. They get John Cena because John Cena is going to get you like 3,000 tickets. Like
It's
just by his name
Yeah.
being on there.
Making that comparison. Look, I can't pull numbers and argue numbers on it, but Cody has been the champion for less than a year. And I think it's disingenuous to compare, oh, well, the company brought in this much money whenever they negotiated their first, like, this show is entirely streaming on Netflix deal versus John Cena not just carrying the company, but damn near being the entire company himself for a decade or close to
and
it.
carrying it through a recession.
Yeah, and so
I mean,
like,
not that
I
there's not
actually-
inflation right now, but like John Cena did carry them through like a financial crash.
I don't actually think I don't hate on Cody. I can't actually ever hate on Cody.
No, I mean,
But I think that frankly, if Cody Rhodes was a champion in any other setting, he'd be fantastic. But the booking has failed him. He should, by being the guy who killed Roman's eternal reign, he should be bigger than all the bloodline stuff.
yeah,
He should be the boogeyman for that entire thing, but he's not.
Mhm.
And so I don't think that Cody is necessarily a failure as a champion. I think number one, the company has failed him as a champion, but number two, it's a case where he is. I hate to give the guy credit for the line, but the CM Punk line, everything there is nowhere near as good as it could be, and it's true. Everything about Cody's reign could have been so much better, but it's not. And so I don't think Cody's a bad champion. I think Cody's pretty good. But honestly, Cody could be a great champion, but he's not because of the booking that's happening around it.
I want to add one
I
bit.
agree with all that. Okay.
I want to add one bit of context, and this is not like even like a WWE thing. This is a wrestling thing. This is a problem with modern wrestling and modern wrestling fans across the board. But wrestling has spent since the 90s has been like training fans to turn on face champions after a couple of months. And that's not like I'm not even calling that out as a WWE thing. That is a professional wrestling problem, and it has been a problem for 20 years in numerous companies with multiple champions, and it's really tiresome.
Yeah. Mm. Well, what were you going to say, Matt?
That's the point. Go back about Cena versus Cody, like who's higher. Like I perhaps not entirely fair, but I actually do think that this is part of like you need to, in my opinion, have more than just like your business is good. You really, I think, to reach that a different level, you need to have some sort of cultural like impact. And by that, I mean, if you go out, and I guess, of course, it would depend upon the type of people you ask. If you ask like men 18 to 34, like you probably would get more of a response than. But in general, if you take a random sample of like 100 people, you know, if you ask them like, who is John Cena? Like, do you know John Cena? Like some of them would be, I would say at least some of them, and it may be a small, very small number, they'd be like, yeah, I know who John Cena is. Now, of course, part of that's because he's done movies and TV shows and stuff like that. So like they would maybe know that. But even taking that out of the equation, like if you went back like 5 years, when he did less TV and movies, but if you like 5 years, like do you know who John Cena is? I still think like a certain degree of them would know. And again, it may not be like that many. Maybe it's like 5 people out of 100, but still some people would know. If you ask, do you know who The Rock is? Like more would probably know.
Yeah.
Of course, because Rock was a big movie star even 5 years ago. But beyond that, it's like if you went and were like, do you know who Stone Cold Steve Austin is? Like, oh yeah, I know who he is. Macho Man. Oh, like you would get numbers. Ultimate Warrior, maybe less, but maybe a couple people would still know who Ultimate Warrior is.
If they're our age,
oh, absolutely.
If they're our age, like Ultimate Warrior, a lot of those guys from the late 80s, early 90s, like if you said Big Boss Man, the Road Warriors,
No,
Ultimate Warrior.
Big Boss Man.
No, for people our age that were kids in that proper age group, even if you didn't watch, like those people got through to you because of commercials and stuff. So like even when I didn't know like watch wrestling or anything, like I knew who the Big Boss Man was. He was in video games, you know, he was in the toy commercials. Like you kind of like you wouldn't know who like Coco Beware is, but like the top-ish guys in like WWE, like you would kind of know from commercials and stuff. So I think like some of those guys would have some pop cultural relevance that like you wouldn't necessarily see now, because like you know, if you're not going to see like a toy commercial with like Roman Reigns or Cody in it now.
No, but that's what I'm getting at. Like Cody Rhodes, like again, ask a random sample of 100 people. Like I don't think anyone would know Cody Rhodes. And Roman Reigns, I would say, is a bigger star, or has been in the last few years in wrestling in WWE than Cody. And I still don't think like people would know who Roman Reigns is. Like again, and I guess if you ask like, if you go to like, I don't know, a college campus and you ask like 100 18 to 34-year-old, well, not 18 to 34, but like let's say 18 to 22-year-old men or boys, young men at a college campus, like, yeah, you'd probably get probably get some percentage of people because they are of the age group. They may actually be into that and know that, but the actual population, no. But Cena, I think he probably would. So to me, is like as weird as a metric as that is. Like I think like that's to me more as like he's your bigger star. Like I'm sorry, there is to me a cultural aspect of it, and I understand applying that to other logic. It's like is someone like Orange Cassidy a star? Like in AEW he is, in the wrestling he is. Do people outside of wrestling know who Orange Cassidy is? Probably no, not probably no one. Maybe someone like Danhausen because he's done some non-wrestling stuff. People might recognize what he looks like, I guess. You
They
know,
would
because of
probably
memes
think
or
he's like a
whatever.
horror movie host, though.
Look, there's
Yeah,
a real
but
easy but super arbitrary way for me to
mhm.
say that John Cena's bigger than Cody Rhodes has ever been. John Cena was on the front of Fruity Pebbles boxes for 5 years. That was a selling point to help Post sell Fruity Pebbles. I'm sorry, Cody Rhodes ain't going on a box of Wheaties.
Isn't
He
Cody
ain't
on
going on
Slim
Frosted Flakes.
Jim's boxes? I saw him on something.
Is
I
he?
don't know. I've seen Macho Man back on Slim Jim
Yeah,
boxes
that's
again.
real weird. He's on like the. I saw him at Five and Below. I was like, whoa, Macho Man's back.
Yeah,
I don't know how they
I
got the rights to that, but
there's still enough fond memories of Macho Man that you can regularly buy Macho Man costumes on Amazon.
yeah.
And it's not just
Mhm.
like, oh, you might get it in when we get it. It's like, no, those suckers are like prime available. But look, it is. I don't want to say it's a bad faith argument. I say it's a not a good faith argument. To use that as the comparison, how much money is the company bringing in between the two different reigns? It's like no, 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 no.
So we're
That's,
gonna.
that's not
I
working.
think I agree with you. So the idea of being like a successful champion would be business plus pop cultural. Well, no, star. Sorry, not. It would be the business during your reign with pop culture penetration mixed with some other factors.
I think the question is going to be
Yeah.
how big are we saying is a good world champion? For example, I will 100% say that John Moxley, in whatever form, in whatever company, is a good world champion. But Mox is not the guy that is going to have pop culture penetration much.
No.
He's not going to have a lot of crossover appeal. So that means that I'm going to say, I'm not going to give. I'm not like that is icing on the cake that puts you over the top. But I'm not going to say that that is a necessary qualifier.
Yeah, because
Um,
I think and it's an underrated quality because people focus on like what did you draw or not. But I think the guys that don't get like enough love or credit are the guys that you can put the belt on them and business just does not change whatsoever. Like those guys don't get enough love that can like hold the ship stable. But I also think the problem though with Cody and business wise though is a lot of it is the brand is the draw, and like those TV deals are locked in, and there's like the sports rights bubble. Like there's a lot that goes into that that's not like because are we gonna say like I'm not gonna say like oh like Brian Danielson's the biggest star ever because AEW signed like that huge TV deal. Like
Mhm.
no, they signed it because sports rights bubble. They do pretty well on TNT, but it was like the brand of AEW plus being like live sports based entertainment that got them that deal. Not any of like their necessarily their workers or their champion at the time. Like I think that's kind of a dubious um, metric. And like I think the houses have been decent WWE, but those are going down. Now
Mm.
I don't blame that on Cody. I think they're just kind of wrestling cyclical. I think they're just cooling off a little bit.
Yeah. We've talked about that. Like it is like, and nothing stays hot forever. Like
No.
and wrestling is very cyclical where something will happen that'll get them hot, and then that may sustain for like a year or two, but it doesn't sustain for like 10 years.
No,
Like it goes down after.
and it's also wrestling,
Yeah.
so it is going to go down, but wrestling has also been historically filled with idiots, so wrestling's always going to do something to shoot its foot off. when it's hot.
Mm.
What's the line from that tweet again? Some wrestlers are just idiots. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like
So-
they fall for the duck season, rabbit season trick every single time.
So, if I'm going to lay out criteria for what I think a good world champion is, I think that if I'm going to call him a good world champion, because there's a difference between good and great in my mind. One of them is going to be, is this somebody who the fans continue to respect? I mean, there's some things that are givens. They have to be over enough to get to that point. They have to be good enough to get to that point. Whether their style of good enough is, kind of the Hogan charisma aspect, whether it's the Bret Hart work aspect, whether it's a mix of the two, which I would say, Mox is a good example of. But like you saying, wrestling being cyclical, I don't want to say, is business booming during their time that makes them a good champion, because by that logic, that hurts Bret Hart's case, and I don't think we can honestly make any kind of argument that Bret would in any way not qualify, right? Like Bret,
No.
Shawn, and Diesel were champions in a very down period
I would
for
say
wrestling as a whole.
I would say Bret Hart's case is actually pretty strong, because if you look at like Shawn and like Diesel's track records as champion, Bret looks a hell of a lot better, because business is always better when he had the belt. Like, it might not have been great,
Yeah.
but like Bret was stable. Like, it never got super bad with Bret until after they had like really killed it, with like the 96 stuff being so up in the air. But like, I wouldn't hold anything against Bret, and I think they didn't lean into Bret enough. Like, I think when we talk about aces, like, Bret is probably the company ace from like 92 to 97 before Austin like really kicks in. Maybe 96.
I think that's fair. And Brad is someone who's hard to quantify, because we've seen more of him obviously during the show. But even then, I don't feel like we've probably seen enough, because like Brett is a guy that the more I see of him, I was watching wrestling kind of during that 92 to 97 peak. So like I could say like I watched Brett, but I mean I was also a child, so I don't think I fully appreciated it as much as I do when I was older. Like again, when we watched SummerSlam 92, and when I watched it as a kid, it's like, oh, Brett versus Davey, like that's a great match. And watching it as an adult, like it's still a good match. I don't think it's as great as I thought it was, but it's still a great performance by Brett, because the carry job he did, it's like, wow. Like you appreciate, like as a worker, like you were doing everything with that match and you made it still look seamless and great.
Can I make an argument about
but-
that match? I want to make a legitimate
Sure.
argument, I think, about that match. If you had given Bret Hart a broomstick, it would have been a better opponent than Davey Boy is in that match.
He could have carried a broomstick.
Bret, that match would have been better if Bret would have just been willing to go heel earlier on.
That's my big problem with it. He kind of, like, there's some small things he could have done in that match in hindsight, like really small things. Like he could have done like a cover on Davey and done like the forearm shiver in the side of his head, like little tiny things like that even like a casual fan like would react to, but you don't like notice.
You just be a little bit of a shithead during the match. That's all you got to do. You can be a face typically, but now you're frustrated and upset. Just be little
Like,
bit of a shithead,
do
that'll
do a cover,
make the dynamic.
do a cover, bitch at the ref a bit, like slow it down, like kind of mug a bit for the crowd, look a little pouty. Like there's a lot of little things you can do.
Take just a little bit of a shortcut. But
Maybe kick him one more time than you need to.
But what were you going to say, Matt?
He's hard to quantify, but I feel like maybe, and I don't know, it's tough to really, no offense because we are fans, but it's tough to sometimes give fans credit, necessarily forget maybe grasping the entire picture of a wrestler, because it's sometimes hard to do. Like, in fairness, it's sometimes hard to do, but I think Brett, maybe people just at least like intuitively or instinctively, or maybe just from what they watched with him, were able to glean that it's like this is a guy who's just like so talented and so skilled and seems very genuine. I think that really fed into like him being accepted as an ace. Like, he obviously was a good worker, even if he didn't really know or could identify what that was, or but you knew he was like he would bring a level of quality with everything. I just remember like the match we saw and reviewed recently, but Brett versus 1-2-3 Kid,
Oh yeah, I was
you
about to
know,
say that was a
and
really
it was
great match.
such a good match, but it was also clearly it's like the veteran Brett like working with 1-2-3 Kid, but it's like and again, if you're an experienced wrestling fan, or people like us who've seen a lot of wrestling, you can see how clearly it is like even 1-2-3 Kid, who's been around, he wasn't a rookie, but he had obviously had less experience than Brett.
He
But
was
you
5
could
years
see the
in at that
classic story
point.
they're just presenting there. Yeah. But you're seeing that what they're giving where in the context of this, like 1-2-3 Kid, it's almost like this kid just like walked in off the streets, trying to make his way in professional wrestling. And Brett was like not toying with him, but like giving him some, and then it's like he almost got caught because of it. And it was a performance about making 1-2-3 Kid a bigger star, like giving him a lot, having him hang with like the champion, with a world class guy. But Brett did it in a way that was almost subtle at times, and it was such a good performance. And you could see how talented Brett was. Not to give anything away from 1-2-3 Kid from Waltman, but and I think people would I think people could glean that from him. Not that they could understand the intricacies of what was happening in front of them necessarily, unless you were like a skilled, a longtime fan. Like, we can see it now, years after the fact, having seen tons of wrestling. It's like, oh, we can appreciate the performance versus even just beyond is this telling a good story in the match, which it
And
was.
I think
But
I
we
think
can
with
kind of
this
appreciate the
show,
little things.
I think with
Hmm.
this show too, we also have the benefit of we have someone that actually wrestled for a decade that can point, like, has spent, what have we been, how long have we been doing this show now? 6.5 years? Yeah, 6.5 years or something.
Yeah.
So we've had a,
Wow, really?
yeah, so
I
we've,
think so, right? At least six?
so we've had
2018, I think.
we've had someone that did it for a decade pointing things out to us. And like I think that's helped me a lot because there's things Chad's pointed out that's also made me notice other things because like I've noticed more now, like there are things I would have never noticed before without Chad's help, like footwork. Like we were talking about Dan Severn, and
Mm.
one thing I said is like I think Dan Severn had a good aptitude because you can tell by the way he like moves around the ring that he like understands it. And then there's stuff like positioning, like we were talking,
Mm.
and like when we were talking about PN News, and I said I don't think PN News is like completely talentless because he's always where he needs to be, so he has like some basis in it, and that's where I think like when I watch NXT now, and people like don't like, and I say, well, it sucks, especially like the women's matches. Like, well, they're always behind in their sequence because their stuff always looks like crap because someone's either there too early or too late, and then their moves always kind of get scuffed.
Yeah.
It's like
Mm.
stuff like that that Shad's like taught me to like see more of. And I think that makes a big difference in a lot of that stuff. But I was also going to say, to go with what Chad said though about some of it, I also think another thing a champion needs to have, especially a face champion, and this is something I think Ricky Steamboat kind of failed at when he won the NWA World Title, is being able to transition from chasing to having the belt. Like some guys cannot pull off. Like I think Sting struggled with this too. Being really good at the chase, but once you have the belt, like you can't, like you just lose something.
I think there were events where that happened to Sting. I don't think that was him.
But I always
It,
think like just in general, and this is not a shot at Sting. I'm just talking about like when I've seen them, and it is timing some things. But I think when Luger finally got his big moments, like Luger's moments always seem to hit better than Sting's do. It's like when they
Mm.
actually don't botch Luger, he does stick the landing better. But I also think this is probably heretical, and I love Sting. Sting is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. I'm just saying, I also think the difference there is Luger's a bigger star than Sting. Like, he might not be a much bigger star, but I think he's just a bit bigger of like a star from like some of his like the '88 run and stuff. Like, I think Luger just has a bit touch of like a little more star power, and he has had some better, like, he's had some, like I'll use a great example. I mean, and they botched his less, but like when he won the title in '97, like I think that landed better than when Sting did. But like they screwed Sting in the part of that. But I do think like his chase of Hogan ended up being a little better than Sting's.
I am going to say if we're using '97, that is all Hogan's fault. Every bit of it.
Oh yeah, there's a lot that went against Sting,
And
but I do think like the
other
early
thing-
'90s stuff, like Luger did do a little better than Sting.
I'm going to say that I'm going to call Sting a bigger star because Sting was whether he was in the world title scene or not, Sting was always magnetic and drawing eyes to him.
Yeah.
And part of what makes him, that's part of what made him so great is anywhere on the card was a big deal because Sting was doing that. Now, having a someone who goes from winning the title to then carrying it well, yeah, I agree with that point. I'm going to struggle for a minute putting a name to... Okay, here's my example. Mick Foley's chase to win the WWF title was awesome. It was this hard scrabble climb, getting there, gotta make it, that sort of stuff. But the thing is that Mick's gimmick and attitude and everything did not... They were great for the chase and for that underdog who was fighting his way up and that sort of stuff. But once you transition him over to the champion side and then the shine wears off of like, yes, Mick won the title, this is so great, I've been waiting for this, and the shine wears off, then you're kind of like, and it just doesn't fit quite right.
Because
Like,
I think with Mick, the money is in the moment with him, where other faces that's not necessarily true.
yeah, his moment was huge.
And
Like, there's no question.
I think face Mick relies heavily on sympathy, and sympathy doesn't work when you have the belt as well, too.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm gonna go back. To Sting versus Luger. Like I'm maybe my fandom like it blinds me, but I would not put Luger over Sting. I will say this though. I think that there is a better argument. There would be a better argument if when Luger was in the WWF, they had just pulled the trigger and put the title on him, and he had
They
like
screwed that so hard.
even if they had like a 6-month reign. Well, that's like they put the title on him like at Mania, and he lost the title again at like SummerSlam or Survivor Series. Like that, you would have a better argument. He was like
They should
a
have.
bigger star because I think that they would have elevated him to a different level. But
They 100%.
they did. I think they did.
They 100% should have put the title on him at SummerSlam, because there's this Raw like right before when they do the contract signing, and he cuts this promo, and he just nails this promo. Like, it's a great promo, because it's I think that's actually what like red pilled like Bryan and Vinny on Lex Luger, where they just went off and talked about how he always gets screwed, even though he like that's kind of like, I think, where the narrative started to shift. So there's this Bryan and Vinny clip on YouTube, I think. And this promo is actually the catalyst, where they talk about how the booking always fails Luger, but when you give Luger like the ball, he always runs with it. And they always like screw him on the finish line, essentially, with it. And like, I like Sting better than Luger. I'm talking kind of just in the sense of stuff I watched. Like, I don't know. I mean, Luger really is underrated though. Like, Luger's does really get screwed by the booking. But like, if you look at like '88 and stuff, he absolutely should have gotten the belt in '88 too.
If I watch Luger stuff, I don't understand how they could could miss on that. Like, honest to God, this was a guy who's been a champion before. He was over. He did a good job with it. How do you do this? How do you screw that one up? Because the guy had, not only did he have the great look, but he's good as a face. His whole chase with Hogan was fantastic. They did that in the thing to kind of keep Sting around the edges and have that be the big payoff for the end, which was great. But in the meantime, while he's doing it, he did a fantastic job. People were behind him. Him having that belt on him looked fantastic. Like, I don't understand how you have that possibility in front of you and screw it up. I really don't.
Because there's always, like, because Flair didn't want to drop it to him in 88, like, because there was a whole power struggle thing. 90, Flair didn't want to do it because he wanted to drop it to Sting, even though, again, I'm not crapping on Sting, but in 89 into 90, Luger was the hottest act in the company. Straight up. He was the hottest thing they had going. And then when he finally gets the belt, it's right after Flair, like, leaves. So he doesn't even get the belt, like, for realsies. And then WWF just totally, like, dropped the ball on him with bad timing.
That's who I was more picking on, because he did have title reigns in WCW. I was more picking on WWF about it. I mean, even if you had him win at SummerSlam and then a month later you just have Yokozuna and Fuji pull every dirty heel trick in the book and screw him entirely. Great. Fine. You know what? That would totally fit the story.
I think you could have
overcame.
I think you could have even had him lose at SummerSlam had you not done the stupid ass celebration. That's what killed him.
It just made him look like such a chump.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So other things that you need for a good world champion.
Good compelling challengers.
Good compelling challengers, and it's hard to put in. It's going to be hard for me to put an exact thing to this, but and we may argue that you kind of need this to get to this point anyway. But you need enough of an aura to be perceived as a big deal. Like, you need to be able, because Becky Lynch wasn't doing great, is gone for a little while, has a long talk with Shawn Michaels, and Shawn Michaels is like, you have to convince everybody else you are a big deal. She comes back and does it, and it goes through the roof. She was the most over wrestler in the world at the time. So, you have to be either conceited enough or good enough to put on the front of, I am a big deal. Like, you're going to believe me because I am a huge deal. And like we already said, Mick didn't really do that very well.
I also think, so there's a couple things I want to add on to your point, because you're doing some real good points I want to add on to. I think, so we'll go with the kind of aesthetic quality that you need to be a good champion. You need to know how to hold the belt. Like, there's a lot of things people do wrong. Like, like, one of the things the USWA is doing when we watch that drives me up the walls, they don't have the belts. Drives me nuts. But, like, and it's one thing I think WWE screws up. Like, they always want people, like, in their gear. They don't want them in clothes. But, like, I really miss, like, the old school wrestling, like Ric Flair in his three-piece suit, and he's got the belt folded up, and he's just holding it on his arm. Like, that's how you, like, hold a belt.
Yeah. I like the idea of someone who there's three things, and then I'm going to hit the exception, because again, with everything in wrestling, it's a 90% rule. Either hold the belt, like, look clean, look sharp, that sort of stuff, and hold the belt. Wear the damn thing where people can see it. Like, I remember that being an issue people had with Bob Backlund, is he had his robe, and they were like, Bob, you can't wear that, no one can see the belt. And I think it was Billy Graham was just like, he's like, Bob, don't wear the robe, don't do that, no one can see the belt, they want to see the belt. And apparently he claims Bob Backlund went, but I like my robe. And it's like, dude, like, either wear it so it looks like a big deal, or another way to hold it properly is put that over your shoulder so it is in the shot with your face when you're holding the microphone.
Or do the Harley race thing where you wear the robe over your belt, but when you take the robe off, it's like kapow, like there's the belt.
It's have it open so it's visible. But the exception I have to it, because there's always an exception to every rule. Steve Austin was such a big deal. Steve Austin was such a huge deal that it didn't matter how he carried the belt around. Because Stone Cold was so big and such a big deal that how he carried the belt was pretty well immaterial.
Well, no, I disagree. I disagree with you there. With his Stone Cold character, if he just was coming out with the belt around his waist, or he was doing interviews and he's holding the belt like Ric Flair, like his character wouldn't do that. Like the way Austin carried the belt, like the way Austin carried the belt was very carefully choreographed to how his character would do that. Like if he had treated it with like the utmost of respect, like it wouldn't have worked, because that's not what Stone Cold Steve Austin would do.
You're right. You're right. I handle that point poorly, but it's one of those, you have to handle it in a way that's a big deal and also fits your gimmick. So, and Austin is an exception. Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
Yeah, can add a point to that. Like I agree. Like I do think how the champion holds the belt, presents the belt, does matter. And I'll say this because talking about Cody Rhodes does this, and I actually don't really kind of like when I do it when he does it, because I feel it's derivative and he's trying. It's to me, it's almost like you're trying too hard. But he's doing something that essentially, I mean, Ric Flair kind of back in the day, but also Nick Bockwinkel, I think, to me, like really did this, where it's like, I'm gonna come out dressed in like an expensive suit, and I'm gonna hold the belt. Like, you know, I'm gonna cradle the belt, but I'm gonna hold it. It's like he's not wearing the belt, it's not like, but he's like holding in a suit, looks great, $1,000,000, holding the belt, cutting a promo, and it's very like distinguished, and it looks like, you know, I'm a world champion, like I'm holding myself and Cody obviously comes out and it's like he's, you know, he likes to wear suits and like hold the belt and everything like that. And but to me when he does it, it's like derivative, and to me, like maybe that's like I'm being biased. And I
No,
don't
the
even hate
tattoo
Cody Rhodes.
kills it. The
it seems to
tattoo
me like
kills the suit. The tattoo.
That's the thing.
Yeah. But to me, it's like you're trying too hard, in my opinion. I think that because it's like someone who did this, and it's clearly I see that you're just aping Nick Bockwinkel, but when it was NWA Power, when Nick Aldis would come out there in a suit, holding the 10 pounds of gold, sweet Charlotte, like holding it, he did the same thing, and it's like you're clearly, I know you're like just stealing this from Nick Bockwinkel.
I think Aldis was.
I actually like.
I
felt it worked.
Aldis felt very cosplay. Cody does too, but I think Cody pulls it off a little better for me. But I always felt Aldis was very cosplay.
Well, I don't think Aldis did a bad job, but he's struggling by by comparison, I guess.
I also liked in the old WCW. The other thing I think is acceptable is when when Tony and Dave had the podium they would do the interviews on, when the guys would come out and they'd put the belt on like the podium. Like I think that's also like that. That's also cool. Or the Harley race promo, where he's doing the bounty and the belt's just there and all the money while he's doing the promo. Like I like that was cool.
What were you gonna say, man?
The money.
Yeah.
I do like that with presenting on the podium, because you're getting the belt over, like you're showing like, look, that you're putting it right instead of like, this is the prize, which it should be. Like conceptually, again, it's like this is what everyone should be fighting for. Everyone should be going crazy to get this belt.
You would push an old lady over because you want this belt so bad. That's like
a point that was made a couple minutes ago that I think is actually a big thing to me. You do need to have some quality opponents to actually, like, once you win the belt, you need to have some quality opponents. And we talked about with Cody Rhodes how, like, and we're not trying to contradict ourselves that it's like, yeah, you can have placeholder like challengers, like, and I agree, but you also need to have like legit challengers. I wouldn't put AJ Styles like a placeholder, because of his pedigree and the fact that he was world champion and has, obviously not just in the WWE, of which he does have a great record in the WWE. Like, but beyond that, people know like he was a deal elsewhere before he reached WWE. So because of all that, like you can have him have a feud with Cody and it's fine. Dominic would be like, if a one-off is fine, but if it was like a long-term thing, it's like, why are you having a long-term feud with Dominic? But I'm digressing, but it does matter because it made me immediately think of this because we've talked about him on the show and have developed an appreciation for him, justifiably so. But when Ron Simmons won the WCW title from Vader, he didn't have like a good reign. And part of that I feel was because he didn't really have good challengers. And I remember like not long after he won the belt, it was a Clash of the Champions, and he like defended the title against I think like Barbarian.
That was
And it's
Halloween
like,
Havoc. Actually, it's
why?
worse than
Like,
you.
Barbarian?
It's worse than you
Oh,
remember.
it's
It was
Halloween Havoc?
yeah, it's
Like,
even worse than it's even worse than you
oh
remember.
wow, I'm remembering it. I'm wow. I was giving them a lot of credit, but
Because that's the
it was like
Halloween
why?
Havoc.
Like why are
It's
Barbarian really?
it's that stupid spin the wheel, make the deal Halloween Havoc where Sting and Jake have the coal miners glove match, I think. But it's on that show. It's on that show, yeah.
And I love Jake, but that was Jake at his height of probably drug use, where he's just, or maybe not the height, but I mean, he was.
No,
yeah,
I
like
mean,
it's a reason. There's a reason, folks, that he didn't last long at WCW even because he
I mean, we did
just couldn't
see
maintain.
we did see that November to Remember where he showed up in like sweatpants and cowboy boots, and we agreed with the Terry Funk heel turn because of the state Jake was in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, like that's an example. It's like Ron Simmons, like a guy who you could, and we talked about this. I definitely have felt like you could have done more with Ron Simmons as like a main event face. You could have made money with this guy, but when you put the title on him, you didn't have anything for him. And that's bad booking. Even at that moment you put the title on him, like you just didn't have heels. It's not even like you wanted to sabotage his brain. You just didn't have heels for him to go over. It's like that's your own poor booking. Like that you didn't have guys already lined up. Like don't pull the trigger. Like you build guys up. But
it would have been so cool if they could have just
like that. I agree. Like you need to have people.
If you could have done it with the Dangerous Alliance still around and he just tears them apart one by one until he gets to Rick Rude, that would have been like such a great like end to that angle.
Yeah, you wouldn't have had him like defend the title against like Bobby Eaton necessarily, but you would have had him demolish those guys. Like
you could have done that on like a main
like on a WCW Saturday night, maybe.
Like main event or something that's like oh hey, it's worldwide, and you got Ron Simmons defending the world title against Bobby Eaton, because like no one thinks Bobby Eaton's gonna win, so you can just throw that on TV and say, hey look, we have a world title match for you this week.
So if I'm you're hitting on a point that I have for it that I think that if you're going to have a great world champion, and this is something that I think Cody has not had yet, and this part of what's hurting him, is after winning the title, the chase, the win, that's not what I'm talking about. They have to have a definitive feud happen where they come out still holding the title. Like you mentioned the Lesnar thing earlier. Okay, that would have been great for Cody, but you need as champion, you need a definitive feud that is going to like cement like this guy. He's not just someone who happens to be the champion. Like this guy's got it, and that is something that I feel like seems to get lost.
Yeah, because like I'll use a great example, but Sting in '98, they do the thing where he has to wrestle Hogan again because they strip him of the title, which was stupid. But then he defends against Scott Hall, has a title match with DDP, but then I think he loses it to Savage in April. Did he last 3 pay-per-views with it, or did he lose it at Uncensored?
I don't remember
I think he made it to
what
April
happened there.
because I think Hogan won it back in April or May. But yeah, so like, but they didn't have like a plan for Sting. They didn't have like a great opponent. I think Scott Hall was a perfectly good first pay-per-view title
Oh
defense
yeah,
for him. But then
yeah,
it was after that it was a problem.
yeah. It's you have to have something that cements it there again, and we didn't get that for that particular run. Now, Sting was somebody who was established, and you say, did he need it? Maybe he didn't. He didn't need it, but it sure as hell wouldn't have hurt.
I'll use a great example of when they did it right though. Stone Cold Steve Austin's first title reign. So he comes out of that with Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels and
Yeah.
DX are gone, and he
Yep.
goes straight into Corporate Dude Love. Is his like
Yeah,
first big challenger, and then he goes pretty much to Undertaker after that.
yes, because Corporate Dude Love, the whole idea was that Foley had like the machine behind him to do it, and in doing so, having the machine behind him, now you've got this force behind you, and here we go, and here's what's going to happen. Good example, and then the Undertaker feud, another good example. We have all of this stuff, and Austin is just cemented as this raging badass over and over.
Oh no,
again.
sorry, I lied. So he did the Dude Love feud, and then he did the quick switch back and forth with Kane, who was like pretty much an undefeated and an unstoppable monster. So he was like a big deal still, and then he goes into the Taker thing. So but there was a definitive like plan there. I think he might have had Farouk in there at some point, but like Mick Foley is a great like starter feud for that.
That is the first feud. Made a lot of sense. It set the tone for the rest of the run, which was great.
Yeah, or another botch one when they did like Brock Lesnar's first reign, and then they had him flee in terror from Triple H and Undertaker, and then they did the Undertaker feud that went wrong, and then Big Show hurt him. That was a bad reign.
Yeah.
I don't remember enough about the first Kurt Angle one. I know they really screwed that one up.
Well, because they were still it felt like they were still leaning on him being a goofball, and he didn't win so much as escape with the title over and over again.
Yeah. I think Adam Page winning, like Lance Archer and Bryan Danielson being those early like title programs for him, like really helped. Like, I mean, honestly, the Bryan Danielson matches were amazing with Page, but I really think finally like really cemented Page with that Texas Death match with Lance Archer.
That was a hell of a bout too.
Stuff like that. Like, I'm trying to think of other good ones. Like, Okada, the first one, his very first title reign that I think finally cemented him is he had that great match with Naito that really showed that he could work at like a world title level. Who was Hogan's first one? I think Hogan rematched Iron Sheik back in the day. I think it hurt Steamboat that he never got away from Ric Flair.
Mm-hmm. I'd agree with that.
A lot of those like in betweens with Triple H that like never worked. Like you could never get away with Triple H, or Triple H just went up. Like I think Voldemort's reign failed because they immediately did a rematch of the 3-way.
They did that, and then they immediately moved that title over to Orton, which was still tied in with Triple H.
Yeah. I think that's why Batista worked, because I think Batista could actually get away from him.
Yeah, Batista went to a whole nother show, didn't he?
I think so. Because they kind of botched, I think, Cena's first reign, though, because they kind of did that Kurt Angle program that I don't think really worked well for him.
Yeah.
Because I don't feel like Cena really, like, clicked as champion until they did that, like, Umaga program. That's when I feel like Cena really, like, came into his own as, like, the champion.
So, okay, here, and I'm going to go with another more recent example. Swerve wins the title. Big deal, right? I mean, it's a huge deal. Swerve wins the title, And I think the thing that like cements and establishing him was the feud with Christian Cage, because that saw the Mogul Embassy turn their back on him, and now Swerve's having to deal with the entire, the whole patriarchy, and Christian being, the slimy snake in the grass he is, and he went through, and it made Swerve as champion because he didn't just win the belt. Now he had a big win as champion. Kind of cemented him in place.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think a good one, like, I've defended him on the show before. We've even defended him since we've been live streaming. But I will defend Diesel's first reign to a degree because I feel like, yeah, business was really bad, but his challengers were abysmal. Because he's wrestling like Sid, British Bulldog, Mabel. Like,
Yeah,
those aren't people like I think if he had been wrestling like Bret Hart and Shawn the whole time, well, Shawn did sandbag him at Mania, but we won't talk about that.
Hey, if we're gonna get after him for something, I'm gonna say that it's working with Mabel, and then Mabel doing something that Nash explicitly asked him not to do because it injured somebody else.
It injured Taker, didn't it?
Yeah, he injured Taker doing it, and then he did it to Nash and hurt Nash's back with it. And it's like, what the hell, man?
Yeah. Was Mabel the one that broke Taker's face?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought. Was it that weird butt drop thing he was doing or whatever?
Yeah.
Ah.
Yep. Well, that's what he did to Nash. I'm not sure if that's what he did to Taker.
That that SummerSlam match is god awful.
I don't think even going into it, I would have. If you had told me that going into it, I don't think I would have been surprised.
But I think that is true though, because like Nash was a bad champion, but I also think like his challengers didn't help him. They didn't give him good challengers. Like you can't main event a pay-per-view against British Bulldog in 1995 and expect to draw interest.
I think the thing I'm going to pick on Nash about is and he may have been pushed into it, but having Nash do the basically switch from the cool Diesel to the handshaking smiley baby face thing. It's like that's gonna cut your knees out from under you.
Yeah, I think that's a great that is a great thing to point out for being a good world champion is not having the booking cut your balls off.
Yeah, and I can't. That's the thing where it's something that influences you, but you don't have any control over, really. Which is unfortunate. Let's see.
Yeah, because booking can really screw you on stuff like that. It's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
And I think finishes to your matches can be really important to like a world championship because like it's been true in like the Triple H era, but there's also eras where it's really bad. AEW thankfully doesn't do this, but when they start hedging their bets and they want to protect people too much, so you're this champion and you get like all these like cheap wins and stuff, or like they're just protecting your opponents too much, and then you come through and it's like they did this to Chris Jericho in his first reign, like where it's like 6 months later and you haven't had like a clean or like good win over anyone of consequence because they're trying to protect everyone at your expense.
Sometimes that works when you're being a dickhead little heel, but again, that is a specific circumstance.
It works. It works if you're the honky tonk man and your gimmick is you're a bad wrestler in 1987.
I was trying to think of Mox in one of his reigns having a good example of it. But that's also difficult because Mox kind of already established whenever he rolled in. So
I think like Chris Jericho's first reign, like having him have to cheat to beat Maven, that's just like
I remember watching that live and I was livid. I was watching that and there were other folks around who weren't fans and I was like, why are they doing this? I'm like, well, because it's planned that way. And I'm like, yes, I know. But why are you planning to have your undisputed world heavyweight champion barely scraping by against the dude who just learned how to do this 6 months ago?
yeah. The problem there isn't that
I hated that so much. It was such crap.
the problem there isn't that he cheated. It's the fact that he needed to cheat because
Yes.
as a heel, it's fine if you cheat just because you want to cheat. Like, that's like a Jesse Ventura line, like win or lose, like always cheat or something like that.
Yeah.
So like, just cheating because you can is acceptable. It's that when you need to is when you can get into problems.
Yeah, there's a difference between cheating for funsies and then desperately doing it to try and keep an upper hand. That's what that stupid Maven match was.
Yeah.
And God, I hated that.
Another great example of like how to not do a title reign. Ultimate Warrior's 1990 reign where they reran this feud with Rick Rude from the year before.
So there is another thing that I don't think is necessary, but I like. I like for them to have. If we can. I like for a world champion, if you're going to be the world champion, especially a babyface world champion, I really like for them to have a really good definitive finisher. You can have, here we'll run the whole damn list. Brett with the sharpshooter, Austin with the stunner, Mox's Death Rider,
Hogan with the leg drop.
Hogan with the leg drop, Warrior. They were really good and really stood out, right? Like they were big things that were like, this is the match ender. Like this
Okada
is
with,
how I brought it home.
Okada
Rainmaker.
and Tanahashi with Splash.
But I'm getting ready to. I stumbled over myself before I said it, Brad. But when you said Okada, I tried to get out Okada with the money clip.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a bad joke.
But
that's something I really like because then you're able to build your matches and like the big finish is this big triumphant thing. Personal thing, I guess.
No, I think a definitive finisher is good, and I also think it's acceptable. Like, because they kind of did it with Okada a bit, but they never had him do a new move. I think it'd be a cool angle to have like a champion whose finisher becomes less effective, so they have to learn a new finisher to adjust to it.
That's an interesting idea.
Actually, they kind of did it with you remember how Tito Santana beat the Executioner with a figure 4 leg lock at WrestleMania 1?
Okay.
So it's a really interesting angle they did with that. So he was using the figure 4 because Greg Valentine beat him with the figure 4. So Tito started doing it because by learning to do the move, he could better defend against Greg Valentine doing that to him, which I thought was a really clever angle at the time.
I like that. Yeah, I like that one.
But there's like little things like that I think you could do. I think just in general, like flexibility too. I think that's why. I think that's the thing I've come to appreciate every time I watch Ric Flair, is like Ric Flair is so flexible in the ring. Like he can work. Like we've seen him take. I mean, Matt and I especially. I think Al Madrill is the match that we use for this. So, Shad, if you haven't seen it, it's on World Class. So, Al Madrill was in Portland in Texas, and he's just like this local mid-carder. He's not terrible, but he's not great. And they have this like 10-minute draw match, and it is just awesome. and like Flair gives him all this stuff. But that's like when people like kind of try to dog Ric Flair. It's like, well, no, you need to watch matches like that. Like it's just some nothing TV match, and it's awesome because
Mm-hmm.
Flair's just that good.
It's 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 easy to fall into a trap of getting after Flair for pretty much always having the same offense, and people wanting to call him a formula wrestler for it. But it's like, you know, everybody does that, right? Like everybody does. Everybody on a big stage has the signature spots they do. It's, but
What match were we watching? I just laughed about it. What match were we watching? I think it was Spring Stampede 99 where Ric Flair does he flips over the turnbuckle and he's going to go run over to the other turnbuckle, and because Sting has wrestled him so much, he just completely runs him over on the apron, and he just looks at him
yeah,
like, "Really, you're going to do this to me?"
yeah,
Like I just laughed about that. But like I think like there's just so much like that Coco Beware match we watched. No, he's just Coco Ware at the time. We'll leave the B off. That Coco Ware match that Flair had was awesome.
yeah.
That's those are the things that about Flair that really make the argument for him being like one of the greatest of all time or the greatest of all time, depending upon how you feel. It's that. It's not even like the limousine riding, jet flying, like all that bravado and everything, which obviously he's more well known about. But it's that. It's like he will go and just have like a 20 or maybe not that 10-minute, like a 10-minute match with Coco Beware or Coco Ware or or Al Madril or uh George South. He could go out there and have like an awesome like match with like the Italian Stallion. And it just fantastic, and you'd be like, whoa, this is like really great. And like he could go out there and again effectively like a jobber, but he'd go out there and have a great match because it's like, I like this dude, I'm feeling it, and like have a great match with anyone. And that's why like you were in that status, because anyone you could decide like, I'm gonna have a great match with this guy, like watch what happens. And he could. And he's probably maybe he's the original one that it's like, oh, Flair could wrestle a broomstick. He's like
Mm-hmm.
the broomstick standard. Like he might be the original one. Because
I bet
he could like take any stiff almost.
I bet if we had a lot of 70s Terry Funk, I bet Terry Funk would make that broomstick do some things.
Fair. Again, there's a lot of Terry Funk that we have not seen or I have not seen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that he would get even more elevated. And I don't consider Terry. I'm not like down on Terry Funk. I think what I've seen of Terry Funk, which is predominantly his stuff from the '80s, it's great. And I will say that caveat is I haven't seen enough of Terry Funk in Japan from the '80s or '90s. But what little I have seen, he's effing crazy in certainly the '80s, like in Japan, like all Japan, everything crazy, where he's just doing stuff and it's like, whoa, Terry. And not even like I'm talking like '90s deathmatch stuff. I'm leaning like '80s where you're like going balls to the wall, like having matches, and it's just amazing. There was a match. I didn't even see the full match, just clips. I think it was like Terry. I think it was the Funks, like Terry and Dory versus Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen. And it's like, obviously there's a size disparity between Bruiser Brody and Stan Hansen and the Funks. But Terry's just going crazy. And at no point are you like, oh, the underdogs, the Funks. It's just insane. And I'm like, what the hell is this match? How come I never knew this match existed? I'm digressing, but yeah, Terry Funk probably would. You're right. Like Terry Funk probably would be up there. Terry Funk's underrated. It's
how off the chains he was in that empty arena match.
Match, everyone needs to watch that match. And it's even if they stopped it before the match happens, just Terry Funk's interchange where he's just like in Lance Russell
just chain smoking away.
Yeah, chain smoking and just chastising Terry. Come on, Terry. Why do you got to
That,
use that language?
that's
And he's just like
exactly.
lifts up a cigarette, takes a big drag of it, and then Jerry Lawler shows up and it's like and he's like frantic, just pushing out the cigarette.
Yeah.
Such a great
That's
match.
basically what I was thinking when you were like, Terry is just going wild and being crazy in that match, and in my head I'm hearing you do like, come on, Terry, you don't need to be
Come on,
like this.
Terry. Yeah, that's right, Larry, because he's a goddamn coward. Terry, come on. Like,
And
Terry, we got to use this footage. Like, you can't use that. Like,
top-rated cameo,
all Lance Russell
top
just so disappointed
top-rated
with the
movie role
surly
too
antics of people.
with Roadhouse.
Yeah, he was in Roadhouse.
I think and I think another great one for Flair, and it is a great match. But the Clash of the Champions match with Sting, I think, is like just a definitive Flair like making a guy a star match.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that was the one where Flair was wanting to put Sting over, not Luger, right? Was that
No,
that year?
that's later in '90 when they were gonna. I think they were thinking about putting the belt on Sting. I think they put it on him in '90. I know things got screwed up because Sting got like injured by security in like '90 because they like blew his knee out or something.
Oh, that was with that cage match. Okay, that was '89, I think.
Yeah.
I think it says a lot. Flair put Sting over so strong with that match. I think it says a lot that, years later, like 13 years later, and the final match of Nitro, which is really, to me, the final match of WCW, because the WWE version of WCW, in my opinion, doesn't count.
It wasn't.
You're just parading around the corpse. You're taking the dried out husk corpse of this
Skin
and
walking.
putting it, wearing its skin. Yeah, but the final match was of WCW was Sting versus Ric Flair, and it says a lot that years later, February 2024, you have Flair showing up for Sting's final match, which it's like, well, I'd rather you not, Ric Flair. But
God.
I mean, Sting obviously loves you.
I gotta. Okay, hang on. I'm sorry. You did this. I've got to call back to another episode that we've done where you're like putting on WCW skin and walking it around, and then what do I hear in Brad's voice? Like, would you wrestle me? I'd wrestle you.
Hard.
I'd wrestle you hard.
Was WWE a great big fat person?
She's a great big fat person.
You can't do it like the look of joy in his face when he asks, like, oh wait, was she a great big fat person?
She a great big fat person.
Oh god.
I ruined Monk for so many people when I point out that she's
put the lotion in the fucking basket. My wife has never seen that movie, and I'm like, I don't know if you would like this movie.
I haven't ever watched it beginning to end because I'm just like, nah, this is not.
Oh wow, really?
Fun for me, no.
It's a good movie.
It's not.
Anthony Hopkins deserved the Oscar he won. Like, he is beyond creepy as Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, and I'm not arguing any of that. I'm just saying, not really the kind of thing I enjoy.
You have to look for the humor and.
Well,
you about a size
he gives
14?
one of. Oh, Anthony Hopkins gives probably one of. I mean, there's many. He obviously won the Academy Award, but it's one of like a throwaway things that always stuck with me, because it's like in all of film, it is one of the most evil things, like lines that I've heard someone give, because it's so just sadistic. Because in the context of the film, and now we're digressing into talking about Silence of the Lamb, but and part of it is that one of the victims of Buffalo Bill, the serial killer, who's the arguably the main villain of the film, is the daughter of a senator, and they bring Hannibal Lecter to kind of help, find out where Buffalo Bill is and get the senator's daughter back. And the senator, the daughter is obviously like heavy set, because that's Buffalo Bill's MO. He takes heavy set women because he skins them and he's using their skin to make a woman's suit. depraved.
Yeah.
But anyway, like the senator is like talking to Hannibal Lecter because he demands to like talk to her, and he's like, "Did you breastfeed Catherine?" And it's like a appalling question, but she goes like, "Yes." He's like, "Toughened your nipple, didn't it?" And it's like, oh my God, like what a thing to say. But he goes on, and then he starts talking about like, when people lose their limb, they have tingling like a phantom limb. And it's like, tell me, Mom, when Catherine's on the slab, where will it tickle you? And I'm like, oh my God, that is the the most evil thing I've ever heard a character say to
I
someone.
thought
You're like basically saying you're like you're gonna laugh at when this woman's daughter is dead on the slab. It's horrific.
I thought you were
So he
gonna
deserves the Oscar.
I thought
That's
you were gonna
how
mention
evil he was.
when he asked Clarice, like, so is she wide in the hips, Ruby? It's such a
I
good
mean,
movie.
we can laugh at stuff because it's so like nowadays it's almost like this is like hilarious in its absurdity, but
And
it's a
they
It's
flan-
where it's
intense
out of
movie.
context helps a lot.
they flanderized him too much though in the sequels. Like I think Red Dragon is a really good movie, but
Oh
not
yeah,
because of him, but because Ray Fiennes is such like a weirdo in that movie. But they flanderized him too much in Hannibal, and then in Red Dragon they did a little too much too. But Red Dragon is a good movie.
Red
I
Dragon's a good movie.
I actually think I've read all the books. I actually think Red Dragon as a book is better than Silence of the Lambs book wise.
That's fair.
But
Hannibal's not.
he's
a
not.
good
He's
movie or book.
barely in the books though. He's barely in the first two books because
Yeah.
they like expanded his role even for Silence of the Lambs. They kind of expanded his role out a bit. But they're good books. They're worth a read. They're quick reads. I think they're better than the movies in some ways, especially for like mood and stuff. Okay, so is there any other like things we think like make or break a champion?
My problem is that there are so many things that, quote unquote, are rules for in wrestling are rules most of the time. And so it's hard for me, beyond what we've done, it's hard for me to add in a whole lot more because of, everything that it could be. It's like, well, because people can have such different gimmicks and stuff. That it is difficult for me to. Okay, here's one other thing I'm going to say. Even if you have someone who is going to be in your top spot, who might have a little bit of a goofy or silly aspect to them, they have got to have an edge in there somewhere. They've got to have a hard edge in there somewhere. Maybe you push them far enough, and that lets the beast out of the cage or something. But, I'm struggling to come up with a good example that's on a televised level.
Orange Cassidy really though, like if you look at his character arc, which I really get annoyed when people still do like the pockets thing. It's like, so you're telling me you haven't watched like Orange Cassidy wrestle in like 3 years. So like the idea, and I have to explain it to people a lot. So the character arc of Orange Cassidy is actually him learning to be like a legitimate pro wrestler and getting good at it. Because if you look at his matches over time, like there's spots between matches he has with the same opponents where he learns from his mistakes. Like there's a move like that they'll just destroy him with the first match and they'll go to do it again and he dodges at that time because he learned. So like the idea of Orange Cassidy is he got serious about doing it over time and he got good at it and learned how to do it. That's like the character arc of Orange Cassidy. So yes, he is a joke character and he keeps some of the silliness, but he is like legitimized the gimmick around it.
Yeah. Well, can I talk a little briefly about the build to Full Gear?
Mm-hmm.
And this was kind of like almost like I feel like they did it off air, but I did see it on social media, so I guess it's kind of out there. But recently, like after one of like the Dynamites or whatever, like who got injured? Chad, you may remember, like someone got injured.
Uh, Chuck Taylor.
Yes, like the what was the Moxley BCC, which is now like they're now the Death Riders.
Yeah.
But they injured Chuck Taylor, and obviously Chuck Taylor was one of the best friends, so one of Orange Cassidy's best friends, and I believe it was Daniel Garcia's in the ring, and Orange Cassidy, because again, his part of the gimmick is like he's an aloof, like stoic character,
Mm-hmm.
but he's like really upset. Like he's obviously like down, silent, checking on Chuck Taylor. And then he gets up and he like shoves Daniel Garcia and is yelling at him. It's like, this is what I said would happen. Like he's like hot, he's heated. And it's so much more effective because it's like, this is Orange Cassidy. This is the guy who's like, the gimmick is that he's aloof, he's lazy, he doesn't care about anything, even though we know like the character he does care. But all of a sudden, this stoic character who doesn't really show a lot of emotion is like fired up and heated and upset, and it makes it that much more like real, because the whole point of like pro wrestling is like it's just, you're suspending disbelief, and all of a sudden it's like if you're used to like the stoic character, like he's not worked up at anything, and all of a sudden he's like fired up and is like pissed off and upset, it makes it way more like, oh shit, like this is intense. And again, little thing, but it kind of goes to the whole point. It's like people are just like, oh, pockets. It's like you're still acting like he's just a gimmick wrestler. Like
Yeah, you have not
that's such
seen
a laughable
Yeah.
point for years at this point. It's not, it's like, oh, they just changed this like 2 months ago.
No, like even
years.
before, like, because that was like, I feel like the culmination of that character arc for him was winning the international title. Like that is where like they culminated the Orange Cassidy like breaking through as a wrestler.
I wasn't even going to say that. I was going to say his run of defending right up until the time when what Mox beat him because he was just so worn down.
Yeah, that's I think where.
Well, he cut a promo like with Renee backstage, and she like asked him how he's doing. He's like, I'm tired, Renee. She goes,
tired.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
But
he said that, and I felt that in my soul.
Yeah, but they even flipped it before then, like when he won the title, or maybe on the way to winning the title. Like they changed it from him being more like the comedy gimmick, where he was like and it was nonchalant almost, but it worked because that's the character. But he was like, he literally cut a promo. It's like, okay, fine, I'll try now. And it's like, oh, now you're going to try professional wrestling. And it's like, you might be like, what? But then he has a match and he does all this fucking crazy technical shit and everything. And he's good. And you're like, oh, he could always do it. It's like, yeah, that's the gimmick. Like he actually was always good. He was just lazy.
Yeah.
But then when he actually had to like decided to be intent, like I'm actually going to be serious about this, he was amazing. And it helped a couple years back.
Go ahead, man. I'm sorry.
Let me finish real quick. It helped like a couple years back that at Forbidden Door, he had like the best match of the card with Will Ospreay, which I mean, Will Ospreay's a good worker, so that's not hard to do. But let's be realistic. It's not as if Orange Cassidy is not a good worker. It's like he had to be carried. Orange Cassidy is one of the best workers of the planet and has been for a while. Like he's a fantastic worker.
Mm-hmm.
But what are you gonna say? I'm sorry.
What I was gonna say is that the other thing that's happened about Cassidy is the malaise gimmick, or however we want to put it, has also been a way of screwing with his opponent. The idea that he had, once he got in and he's like, no, all right, I'm going to try now, and he's doing this great stuff, and then he goes back to doing the hands in the pockets and the lackadaisical kicks and everything. He is screwing with who he's in the ring with to piss them off and get them to not think clearly. It's mind game stuff. But the fact that it's not spelled out in bright, shiny letters anywhere, basically, I am so 100% with you that Cassidy as a world champion at this point, absolutely. That international title run was a star-making thing. I mean, what was it, like 25 defenses or something?
Yeah, I think it was like 30 something.
Mhm.
Okay, like that many, and he kept the consistent story going as they got more and more hurt as time went on, and he couldn't use his go-to stuff. Like, dude's got it. All right, so
I think you have to have going back to like things I think a world champion needs. Like, I'm gonna put this on the wrestler past the booking and everything, but you do have to have like a creative vision for yourself as the champion. Like, you have to establish like I'm gonna go back to Flair. Like, you have to establish like your relationship with the belt, like what the belt means to you, like as a person too. Because like when Flair has the belt, like Ric Flair would probably like sell his mother to keep that belt. Like that belt like means everything to Ric Flair. Or like how Bret Hart would like kiss the belt, like when he took the belt off before matches. Like those are little touches, but it shows their like vision for like their creative vision for being like the champion. Like it shows the meaning to the character, because sometimes guys just get belts, and you see this on indies a lot, and they just have the belt on. And then they just take the belt off and hand it to the referee with no like emotion whatsoever. And it's just like they're just a total dead fish about it.
yeah, I think that's part of the difficulty in the transition from chase to champion is you have not established what your gimmick's relationship to that belt is. My last gimmick, where I was a heel, I took that belt that I won, and then I took the logging chain that I carried around with me and wrapped it around the belt. I wouldn't show it off or anything. I would just carry it around with me, because his whole thing was, that whole gimmick's idea was, I didn't win this belt for prestige or anything. I won this to take this golden idol away from all of you. Like that was an intentional thing. But if I had done that earlier in my career, it just would have been like, well, golly gee, I got this belt now. Isn't that great? And it's like, so?
There's actually one I really like. So when New Japan got a new Intercontinental title and they still had it, so Naito is the champion, and like based on his character, like, okay, well, we have a new belt coming, so like why don't you, as part of your character, just rip the belt up? So like he would come to the ring and he'd like throw it down, he'd throw it at like the Young Boys. Like there's one where he like drops it, he just starts kicking it towards the ring, and like the belt gets more and more tore up because he's legitimately like mistreating it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they got a new belt, so what do they care if he trashes the old one? But it really worked with his character at the time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not just, I'm the champion now. It's like, well, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, or you could be like Norman Smiley when he was the hardcore champion and he kept trying to lose
Didn't want it.
Or remember, or it could be like, did you ever see the South Park episode where they're playing baseball and all the teams are trying to lose? Like, look like they're trying, but they're trying to lose.
And the really good teams were able to intentionally lose the game because they were so good at it.
Because they could, like, remember he went to do something and he hit it off of his bat for a hit. They're like, what?
I remember one of them where he pitches the ball and the guy hits it, and it flies into right field, and Butters isn't even paying attention. He's just holding his glove out to his side. He hit the ball directly into Butters' glove for the out, and they're like, oh, crap. They're going to lose.
Or Bat Dad. I love that one with
Bat
Randy Marsh, like, this is America.
Yeah.
I know
hear no bell.
I didn't hear no bell. I know Mikey Whipwreck did the I don't want to keep this belt, I'm scared of it thing first, and he did a great job with it. I just really enjoyed the hell out of Norman Smiley doing it because, one, it was a bright spot in that point in WCW, but then also it's Norman Smiley showing why the dude's excellent.
Yeah.
So.
And there wasn't, like, the world title was kind of involved, but I do use it as a good example of when I think WWE did something right, is when Moxley and AJ Styles kept screwing with each other and costing each other matches against James Ellsworth. Before he was
Yeah.
a creepy pervert.
Yeah, before that came to light. That's
I think those are some interesting things though, because I think there is like a lot that goes into being a good world champion, and booking has a lot to do with it. But I do think sometimes, like I would say like with the Cody situation, I don't know where that's necessarily going wrong. I do think some of that is the way fans have been trained to just turn on face champions. Like that's kind of where I think a lot of it's coming from. Because like I think his reign could be booked a lot better, but I don't think it's necessarily like bad. Other than like SummerSlam being solo, I think was a bad idea. But I do think I think there's a good healthy chunk of fan training kicking in and them turning on a face having the belt for more than like 2 days.
I think I think the biggest downfall to Cody's reign is that they have never let him move on from doing bloodline stuff. He has just consistently been tied into that. It's like he should be past that. If we're going to have the bloodline civil war, fine, but there's not a reason why Cody is still in the middle of it.
I think having the other world title screwed him really bad because I think if he could jump between the shows or he had a long program with Gunther, it would have worked better.
Just not being involved with the bloodline, I think, is the move that needed to happen and hasn't.
Or if he could go over to Raw and just mess with like Drew McIntyre or CM Punk or like Seth or Gunther,
just
like it would
just have a straight up 1v1 feud that doesn't have all that other stuff tied into it.
Yeah.
But
well, do we have anything else for this week? Anything anyone wants to?
I don't think so.
Okay, well that is.
I don't think so either.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we covered the topic really well, really quickly, and then we're like, "Oh, we did too good a job."
Yeah. Well, I think it's a good topic, but I probably should have thrown a second one in there. But sometimes when we start getting past 11:30, we start crashing out too. So that's also a positive.
Yeah.
So I think next week we are going to finish off February of USWA, kind of get that out of the way before Thanksgiving sets upon us. I think we get some title changes on this one.
Okay.
Oh yeah, because we have to because they're doing a rematch because remember they held the title up with Kamala and Coco.
I really do want to see that. I mean, it is, as you just said, Matt, it is Kamala, but I want to see Kamala and Coco have this match.
I'll see if I can find house show footage.
Shad, again, I mentioned this on the show, but you brought up a great point. It's like I understand. I guess credit to the USWA in '92. They roped me in because I go into this knowing, oh, it's a studio show. I'm going to see it's predominantly like setting up angles for the actual like live events.
Mm-hmm.
But everything about the setting up, I'm like, damn, I want to see the actual show and see that because I told you like last time we reviewed this stuff when you had Coco, because he's all again we're now only in February, but for so far in '92, it's Coco cutting his like singing promos and it's like he's doing like a thing, but it's like it's kind of cutesy and it's like okay Coco, like you do your singing promo. But then when he came on and he's like not singing, he's like he's cutting a serious promo. I'm like, I take a step back. I'm like, oh
yeah,
wow, you're actually serious about this, and I actually want to see I want to see Coco versus Kamala. I'm like,
I'll see
now
if
that I'm not going to see that necessarily.
So
I'm like, damn.
I'll see if they're out there.
The thing through that whole build has been that's the thing that's caught my attention because I feel like I have just been inundated with too many Moondog brawls at this point that I'm kind of like, here we go. Here's another. Oh, they got a table. You know it, but Coco Kamala.
Moondog.
I have to admit.
Yes, but I will say the Moondogs versus Jarrett and Fuller or Jarrett and Lawler. Like with the clips we've seen of the actual matches, I'm like, damn, the matches look good.
I don't know. There's something.
Like, I'd be so into the matches.
There's something comforting for me when we watch these every week about the Moondogs and their vendetta against the announce table. Like there is something comforting. It's almost like a Tom and Jerry cartoon. It's like what antics are we gonna get up to this week, and how are they gonna like destroy get the table away from Dave Brown?
They've got the Japanese table.
Yeah.
They're getting out into it.
Yeah,
They're in the backstage. They see Dave Brown has a table. It's like, nope, absolutely not.
yeah.
Not gonna let that stand.
Hey, Matt, what would you say the Moondogs' job is? Tables!
Table.
It's
What do you mean?
It's
Guys, what I say?
It's interesting because I look.
I don't want to hear no hair about no table.
It is funny though, because I look forward, like when we do these, I'm always like, okay, there's gonna be a Richard Lee promo. It's gonna be awesome. Like it's like I want to see how the Coco thing's gonna go. Like, oh man, Eric Embry's gonna be on there just being a sleazeball. Like there's so much stuff I look forward to every week. Like when we do this, like.
But what is Dave Brown's job? Just tables.
Just
tables with Richard Lee.
I don't know how to hear anything more about tables.
Tables.
I think that's a good way to go out.
Yeah. Well, that has been it for the 4Corners podcast. We've been in 3 corners because Craigbot doesn't count, and you've been in the 4th, and we will